Imagine a woman so dangerous, so determined, that not even kings could resist her charms. A queen whose presence marked a before and after in the history of Israel. Her name still sends shivers down the spine. Jezebel. This is not just a biblical story. It's a dark mirror that forces us to stare straight into corruption, idolatry, abuse of power, and the justice that, though delayed, always arrives. If you're ready to discover how a single person unleashed the spiritual decline of an entire nation, then stay with us until the end. This channel is dedicated to bringing you the deepest, most intense, and most revealing stories from the Bible, told with passion, truth, and purpose. Subscribe now, ring the bell, and join a community that isn't afraid to face eternal truths. Jezebel's story will not leave you indifferent. Imagine for a moment a queen who wasn't content with the power of her throne. A woman who didn't need swords to conquer or armies to impose her will. Jezebel didn't whisper orders, she decreed them with a look. From the moment she set foot in Israel, the air changed. The light receded. Her name became a symbol of fear, of manipulation, of rebellion against the sacred. But what makes her story terrifying is not just her cruelty, but the way her darkness slowly infiltrated, like a poisonous shadow that seduces before destroying. It is there, in that seduction, where true danger lies. When evil disguises itself as purpose, conviction, even love. Jezebel didn't arrive alone. She brought with her Baal, the false god who promised fertility, pleasure, and power. By marrying King Ahab, she sealed a pact between the throne of Israel and the vilest idolatry. And it wasn't a superficial alliance. It was an invasion of the soul of a people. God's temple took a back seat. Altars to Baal rose on the hills. The voice of the prophets began to fade. And in its place, the complicit silence of a nation that preferred not to see. How often do we ignore evil for convenience, for comfort, for fear? Jezebel understood something that many don't. That true conquest begins in the heart. She wasn't just the king's wife. She was the true power behind the throne. Ahab, weak before her charms and sharp words, became a puppet in her hands. But it wasn't just him. All of Israel fell into the web of her intrigues. Every altar destroyed, every priest murdered, every ritual to Baal, were steps in her plan to tear God from the souls of his people. And you? Do you recognize today how many Jezebels there are disguised as progress, tolerance, freedom? The spirit of Jezebel did not die with her. It lives on, camouflaged, waiting for weak hearts to rule. In the midst of that darkness, one rose up. Elijah, a man of fire, a prophet unafraid of death, with no price to buy and no throne to flatter. His voice alone challenged the entire empire of Jezebel. His faith was stronger than threats, clearer than lies. And in a world where many remained silent out of fear, he spoke. He spoke with the authority of one who walks with God. And that was enough to ignite the spark that would change the course of history. Where are the Elijahs today? Where are those who do not surrender to the system, who do not sell their souls for likes, applause, or acceptance? Elijah didn't present himself with swords, but with a living word, and he did so before the king himself. "There shall be no rain except at my word," he declared. A decree that unleashed drought, famine, and despair. But it also awakened the people. Jezebel, enraged, saw how her god Baal, the supposed lord of the weather, could do nothing. No storms, no thunder, no rain. Only silence. The silence of a false god in the face of the voice of the true God. And that silence, that emptiness, was the first blow against his empire of lies. The drought lasted 3 years. 3 years of cracked earth, of dead fields, of extinguished hope. And while everyone suffered, Jezebel remained steadfast, clinging to her pride, more determined than ever to destroy Elijah. But she didn't understand that her war was not against a man, but against heaven, and no one can win that battle. In her madness for power, she prepared the final trap, to gather all the prophets of Baal and pit them against the lone prophet. Mount Carmel would be the stage, fire from heaven would be the test, and the nation, the jury, an inevitable confrontation, an urgent decision. The day arrived. Elijah alone defied 850 prophets. "The God who answers with fire, that is the true one," he said. Jezebel thought her spectacle of blood and pagan dancing would impress, but not a spark fell. They screamed, they cut themselves, they cried out to Bel. Nothing. Absolute silence. Then Elijah approached, restored God's altar, doused it with water, and he prayed. He didn't scream, he didn't beg, he just prayed. And the fire descended. Not a flame, a heavenly blaze that consumed everything. Sacrifice, stones, water, earth, everything. The people fell face down. "The Lord is God," they cried. And at that instant, Jezebel's rule began to crumble. But Jezebel did not accept defeat. Her heart, hardened by pride, did not tremble before the fire from heaven nor break at seeing her God ridiculed. On the contrary, like a wounded beast, she roared with fury. She vowed to kill Elijah. She vowed to restore the worship of Baal with blood. She did not learn. She did not listen. She did not discern the times. Instead of humbling herself, she rose even more against the Most High. How often do we see the same thing today? People who, instead of repenting in the face of God's evidence, harden themselves. They mock, they rebel, they believe judgment is not coming. But heaven never forgets. Jezebel wasn't just wicked, she was strategic. And her next move would demonstrate the lengths she would go to for power. Her obsession wasn't just with the prophets, but with anyone who wouldn't bend to her will. And so her sights fell on something seemingly insignificant. A vineyard. Naboth's vineyard. It wasn't common land. It was an inheritance, a legacy, a principle. But to her, it was just another thing she must possess. When Naboth refused to sell it to her, Jezebel wasn't offended. Her ego was. Her will was challenged, and she couldn't allow that. She didn't ask, she commanded. She didn't negotiate, she destroyed. He wrote letters in the king's name. He manipulated the city's leaders. He staged a sham trial. They accused Naboth of blasphemy and stoned him. His blood watered the land he refused to sell. And Jezebel, cold as marble, went before Ahab and said, "Rise and take the vineyard. Resistance is already dead." So simple, so brutal. Justice was sold out of convenience. Does this sound familiar? How often in our societies does the innocent fall and the guilty enrich themselves? But what Jezebel didn't know is that in heaven, every drop of blood has a voice. And Naboth's voice cried out for justice. God sent Elijah once again. The prophet stood before King Ahab and declared the divine sentence. "Where dogs have licked the blood of Naboth, they will lick your blood also. And Jezebel, dogs will devour her." It wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal judgment. Heaven had spoken. And although Ahab humbled himself and punishment was postponed until after his death, Jezebel showed not a hint of remorse. Her arrogance was her shield, her title, her refuge. But the prophetic clock was already ticking, and when God decrees, no crown can stop the inevitable. Years passed. Ahab died in battle. Wounded in his chariot, his blood trickled onto the ground, right where Naboth had been killed. And there, as it was said, the dogs licked his blood. But Jezebel still lived. She still reigned. She still believed she was invincible. She didn't understand that every day that dawned was one day closer to her doom. Finally, God raised up Jehu, an impetuous warrior, an instrument of judgment. His mission wasn't political, it was divine. He was going to cleanse the house of Ahab, to eradicate all memory of Jezebel, and he would do it without mercy. Jezebel knew Jehu was coming, and instead of trembling, she put on makeup. She adorned herself. She leaned out the window, not to flee, not to repent, but to seduce, once again, to manipulate, to believe her charm still worked. But the days of her power were over. Jehu looked up and cried, "Who is with me?" And at that moment, Jezebel's own eunuchs, her servants, her allies, betrayed her. They seized her and threw her out the window. Her body hit the floor. Her blood splattered the walls, and the horses trampled her. Thus ends all glory without God. Jehu ordered her burial out of respect for her royal lineage. But when they went to search for her body, they found only her skull, her feet, and the palms of her hands. The dogs had fulfilled the Lord's word. No grave remained, no honor remained, only shame, only the echo of a life that defied heaven and lost. Jezebel was forgotten not for her power, but for her judgment. Her name was marked as a symbol of corruption, idolatry, and manipulation. And her end was written not by men, but by divine justice, which never fails. This story is not an ancient tale. It's a mirror, a warning, a cry that pierces the centuries. It tells us that evil may prosper for a time, but it will never reign forever. That the Jezebels of this world will fall. That every throne built without God will end in ruin. That every manipulation, every injustice, every drop of innocent blood will be answered from heaven. And it invites us to decide, to rise like Elijah, to not be silent, to not sell out the truth, because judgment is coming, but so is restoration, for those who remain faithful, for those who do not bow down to idols. The story of Jezebel is not just another chapter in the Bible. It is a living warning, an alarm for sleeping souls, a line drawn between truth and lies. Because today, as then, the spirit of Jezebel continues to operate, disguised as ideologies, power, control, and beauty that seduces and corrupts. But also today as then, God continues to raise up his Elijahs, men and women who do not sell out, who do not surrender, who are not afraid to speak with fire when heaven supports them. If this story spoke to you, don't ignore it. Don't listen to it like an ancient legend. Take it as a personal calling, a warning, and an opportunity. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. No matter how high evil has risen, no matter how strong its dominion seems, God has never been defeated, and everything that rises against him will fall. So it was with Jezebel, so it will be with every throne built on lies. And you, which side are you on? This channel exists so that truths like this one don't get lost in the noise, to awaken hearts, to challenge spiritual conformism. If you feel this message has moved you, if you know there's something deeper waiting for you, subscribe to the channel and follow Jesus with all your heart. We're not looking for popularity here. We're looking for souls who want to walk in the truth, without masks, without half measures. Turn on notifications, because what's coming will also be challenging, necessary, and transformative. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth, who is surrounded by modern-day Jezebels, who has been hurt by corrupt systems or voices that extinguish faith. Don't be silent. Be part of this mission, because silencing the truth is allowing deception to rule. And you weren't called to be a spectator. You were called to be light, to be a voice, to be fire. And if you've ever felt like Naboth, surrounded by abuse, scorned for standing up for principles, remember this: God sees you, and your faithfulness will not be in vain. For the Lord honors those who honor him, and judgment is not slow. Heaven answers, not in our time, but always in his perfect timing. And when he rises, no one is left standing. Thank you for staying this far. My name is Oliver, and it's an honor to join you in these profound reflections. You are not alone. This space is more than a channel. It's a refuge, a community, an altar of truth amidst the noise. Every time you turn on one of our videos, we walk together toward a firmer, braver, more real faith. See you in the next video. Until then, remain steadfast. Seek the Lord with all your being, and never forget, God is just, his word is eternal, and his judgment inescapable. I embrace you with all my heart. Blessings.